Hello, everybody, and welcome to my podcast. My name is Lynette. Today, we're going to talk about part 3 of a 4-part series entitled The Secret of Life. And this particular one addresses be real. And by be real, I mean be your authentic self. So many times when we meet people, we almost get embarrassed. Maybe we make excuses for the few pounds that we need to lose, whatever the case is. You've got to learn to be proud of who you are. Say it confidently and boldly. Because the truth is, who you're speaking with, believe me, they are their first priority. They themselves prioritize themselves. So don't compromise who you are and what you are. Be proud of that and have gratitude for that. Feeling good about yourself shows a confidence. Because if you try to create some sort of illusion, first of all, it shows an insecurity that you're not contented or proud of who you are. But second of all, the person you're talking to knows the truth anyway. I mean, when somebody gives you a lot of excuses or says certain things, don't you kind of know where they're coming from, what they lack? But somebody who unapologetically comes forward who they are, regardless of what attributes they have or don't have, there's something very sexy, very confident, very attractive about that. And you see that all the time. I think that's why we see so many younger men actually attracted to older women, because it's the confidence that they instill that you've learned through this life. In fact, the longer we've been here on this planet, the more we have learned, and that in itself is so attractive. Yes, youth brings with it certain attributes that you wish would have carried over to being older. However, there's also certain things that it didn't bring with it, and that is knowledge and a certain type of confidence that comes from just having experiences. And speaking of experiences, I realize something that I've talked to you about, the secret to life. And as we know, it's stopping that constant chatter in your head so you can be who you are in the moment, always confident in being who you are. But so many times, so many people say, don't think about the past, don't think about this, don't think about that. But they don't tell you how to do that. And it's not something someone can just say, don't do it. That's like saying, don't breathe. I mean, you have to have a game plan as to why and how not to do it. And to be honest with you, I wasn't sure how to do that. This is how life unfolded for me. This is a pattern it took that taught me this, that really and truly I would have known that there is a exercise that you can put into place to not only help you with this, but to conquer it. Because we don't need that constant chatter, that idle chatter that loops around negativity constantly. Our minds, our brains are there for problem solving, for making decisions when we call on it. But it doesn't need to be looping around 24/7. And I'm going to tell you now how I accomplished that. It was pre-COVID. And I was having physical therapy. And every time the physical therapist would come over, they would take my blood pressure. And I was so afraid I wasn't going to be able to do what they needed me to do or wanted me to do. So consequently, my blood pressure would go up. And every time they took my blood pressure, it was pretty high. I'd never worried or even thought about blood pressure before, but that certainly did show me the connection between how you think and the effects it has on your blood pressure. So anyway, they told my doctor that I had high blood pressure, and she wanted me to take medicine. Well, I didn't want to take medicine, so I Googled, how do you treat high blood pressure naturally? And it came up in this audio. It's kind of meditative, but you really don't need to go through all the steps. The big picture is that it says, empty your mind. So the way I do this works for me, maybe you're going to find your own way to do it, is I visualize the top portion of my head empty, the inside empty. And at first I was reluctant to do that for fear I'd walk around like zombie-like. Then I realized, no, that's not what it does at all. What it does, it's there to confidently answer questions, problems, decisions. But when you don't need it, when you're just being, it keeps you fully centered in the present moment. So what I do if I'm laying in bed and my head starts looping around with all these things of the past or whatever is going on, and quite frankly, a lot of them aren't even true, then I picture the top of my head empty. And believe it or not, it stops those thoughts in their track. And so I wanted to share this with you because I shared it earlier, but I know some of you haven't heard all the episodes. It is an earlier episode, but regardless, I wanted to bring it up again because it is very, very important. Because so many times we're told what to do, but we're not told how to do it. And so it kind of leaves you hanging. But there is a way. And this is the way I came across, by letting life unfold. Just like we talked about in an earlier episode, if you let life unfold, maybe the whole reason I ended up taking physical therapy, and maybe the reason I had high blood pressure, was to bring me to this audio, because it really taught me to stop those negative thoughts in their tracks. Again, every time my mind starts looping around with negative thoughts, I visualize the top part of my head inside being empty. And it's okay. It doesn't take away your intelligence. It doesn't make you like a zombie. It makes you present. And then everything is still there intact. Even better, because when you call on it, you're calling on it for a purpose, for a reason. It's not a lot of idle chitter-chatter that's causing emotional distress. And by the way, just a side note, blood pressure does cause health problems. And so another benefit of doing this is keeping your blood pressure intact. That translates to better health. Now I'm going to bounce back to being yourself authentically. I remember I started really zeroing in on this when I would go to the doctor, and all of a sudden I thought, do they think I'm just sitting home? And I didn't want them to form their own opinion for fear they wouldn't treat me as good, possibly, as somebody that they thought it was more important for them to have their health in line, intact. And I wasn't too far off base. But when you walk knowing that your life matters, that you're proud of who you are, not everybody needs to know everything that you're doing. In fact, they don't need to know anything that you're doing. And that's really their problem. If somebody is forming a decision about you, then move on. Get another doctor, get another friend, get another whatever. Because People should treat you with respect and dignity, regardless if you tell them about yourself. Because the truth is, you don't need to tell people what you're doing. In fact, I personally feel sometimes when I hold things in, it's almost like my own little hidden secret. Carrying my own desires, my own goals, makes me feel confident within myself. It doesn't make any difference what anybody else thinks or knows. But as an individual, I stand stronger and I stand taller. And I stand more confidently when I know that I myself as a person and living my life to the fullest and doing my best. And that goes for all of us. It doesn't matter what you're doing, so long as you're doing your best, whatever that is, your personal best. And it doesn't matter what you're being your personal best at. If you found something that makes you happy, God bless you. That is a blessing for sure. So be proud of who you are. Be confident in who you are. And the only person that needs to know all that's going on within your life is you. And that makes you walk stronger, puts a little bounce in your step. Personally, I think having goals are wonderful because it gives you something to work for. Don't make your goals so rigid that there's not room for redirection, but have a baseline goal and be open to that redirecting. But in all things, don't forget, be proud of who you are. Be proud of what you have. Be proud of what you don't have. I mean, you don't have to pretend to be anybody but who you are, because there is something so attractive about somebody that feels good being who they are. I realize even the celebrities that I am drawn to the most, when I started thinking about that today, is the ones that have shared their limitations, that are open. They're not pretending to be anyone but who they are. And I really admire that, because we are human beings. And not only are they willing to do that, but in doing so, they're helping somebody else. Because if you're a young person growing and looking up to your role models, and you think, gee, everybody's so together but me, I mean, what does that leave you feeling like? But I love when people share their human side, and we all have a human side. Remember, nobody is perfect, but also remember, you're pretty darn close. With all the steps we've taken throughout all these episodes, and now walk boldly and strongly and confidently in who you are right now. It doesn't mean you're not going to grow, because next year it's going to be who you are that day or that year or that time in your life. But regardless, feel good about you. Feel good about saying, yes, I do this, I do that. No matter what it is, no matter what's going on in your life, let your confidence shine. But never give up being better and better. Always keep a bit of a goal in mind. And as I said earlier, a goal with room for redirection. Don't be so dead set that a redirection throws you out of the water, basically. But just know it's God's calling for your life, regardless of where it takes you. I mean, who would have thought me being diagnosed with high blood pressure? And I was really upset about that. I never gave much thought to blood pressure. But who would have thought it would have taught me to learn how to stop that chitter-chatter in my mind. So now we've covered walking in who you authentically are. And there's so much to be said for that. And truthfully, you don't want to know if somebody's there for you because they think you're somebody or not. It's best to just be you and know that who's around you is there because of who you are. So to sum it up, out of the 4 secrets to life, first we talked about letting go, and that is not carrying all that baggage with you that isn't yours. And part of doing that is what I just mentioned about clearing out your mind so that stuff isn't hanging on mentally and emotionally. And the second one was gratitude. Be grateful for who you are, who you've become, where you're at in life right now. There's always room to grow, and we should continue to grow so long as we're alive. But be grateful for what you do have at this moment. And thirdly, be real. Be who you are. Be unapologetically who you are. And there's such a freedom to that. Walk freely, walk confidently. With that being said, I will talk to you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.